Hey guys, the Explorer 4 here, Horrorboy465, aka Nate Murphy. Welcome back to some more reviews, and today we're getting to a review that has been necessary for my channel for a while. And it's because today we're talking about Phantasm IV, Oblivion, which came out in 1998. I believe it gets a 5.7. It gets 5.7 on IMDb. The final movie in the franchise to be directed by Don Coscarelli. And the reason that I say this is a movie that is necessary for me to get to finally after all these years is because a long time ago, back when I had first bought Phantasm IV, it was really the only Phantasm movie that I owned, and at that time I had not seen 2 or 3 yet. 5 wasn't made yet, and the first one I had seen a long time ago. So picking up Phantasm IV, watched it a long time ago, and I will say this, the movie is not perfect. It's definitely not one of my favorite ones from the series, which is, I know, kind of awkward because for most fans this is one of their favorites. I still don't understand that. I still don't understand how this movie gets less controversy than Phantasm 3, because I absolutely love Phantasm 3. I partially kind of get where people are coming from with Phantasm 3, but not totally. I still don't understand why this doesn't get more controversy than Phantasm 3. I'll get to my reasons why I think that in a minute. But I had seen the movie a while ago, and I'll be honest, I did a rant on it. I remember that back then I was not saying too many good things about Phantasm 4, and that was one of the videos that I made that attracted a lot of controversy because a lot of people came to the video and was wondering, why do you hate Phantasm 4 so much? Phantasm 4 is a great sequel. And I kept on wondering, like, man, why does people keep on defending this movie so much? It's not good. It's bad. So back then I was so confused. I was like, man, why are people, dogging me so much for hating this movie? I really did hate the movie back then. And really, the big reason why I did a rant on it is it's kind of my fault, honestly, because when you go into a film franchise like Phantasm and you go to like a random movie in the series and try to review it, it's not going to work out so well. You're going to be lost. You're going to be confused. But now that I've seen 1, 2, and 3, and 4, I've pretty much seen all of them. Now that I've watched the movies in order, Phantasm 4 makes a lot more sense now than it did before. Because I remember when I was watching this movie, I just could not figure out what was going on. I could not figure out where the story was at, where it was heading. I couldn't figure out pretty much how to put the story together. But, I knew that after a while people were telling me that that was the biggest reason why I wasn't really getting into the movie, because I had only seen 4 at the time. And you can't just, it's just one of those series that you cannot just pick a random movie out of and start watching. Because if you do, ultimately you're not going to like, probably most likely not going to like a movie like this, because it has a lot of stuff in it that's supposed to be continuing from a previous movie. And if you don't know what the events that happened in the previous movie, you're not going to know what's going on in this one. So a big reason of me doing that rant before was my fault. I shouldn't have just watched 4 alone and try to do a review on it. So I'm giving it more of a justified review today of Phantasm IV, Oblivion. And like I said, it's not a perfect movie by any means. I still have problems with it. Even to this very day, I still have problems with it. There's still some stuff in this movie that I think is kind of bad. But I would say overall the movie's pretty good. One of the things that I don't understand about this movie is that it gets a lot of support from the fans. And if you're a fan of Phantasm IV, that's no problem in my book. That's totally fine. Everybody's entitled to their own opinions. And if you like Phantasm IV, that's cool. But I never really understood, especially finding out that Phantasm III got so much controversy because of the different tone it kind of had, how Phantasm IV doesn't get more controversy than it should, I think, in my opinion. It's a lot of people's, not really favorite, but one of their favorites usually. And I don't really understand why it's most people's, choice of a better sequel, I guess, than Part 3. I could say that. But it's because with this movie, I guess it's because I can respect this. Don Coscarelli kind of wanted to go back to what made the first movie work. You know, a slow atmosphere, a slow pace. And that was nailed. The atmosphere was pretty decent for its budget. And the storyline, the slow paced storyline, I did not mind that. I liked the slow pacing. I thought Don Coscarelli handled that very well. Just to get through the things I like about the movie real quick. So the things I like about this movie is that it has some practical effects that are really good. It has some bits of action that I don't mind. You have a couple of explosions in the movie which are pretty cool. I love the storyline. I will admit that this movie does have a pretty good storyline. I like the idea of them having an origin story. I like the idea of them trying to continue the story right after part 3. I like how they took this movie in a new direction. They did some new things with this movie. They explored new ideas, which I really enjoyed. I still like the music, even though I can't remember a lot of music from this movie, but I still do like the music. Angus Scrimm is awesome. A. Michael Baldwin and Reggie Bannister and pretty much the rest of the cast does a great job as well. But the problems I got with this movie is that, first of all, it uses a lot of deleted scenes from the first movie. And when about, I know I'm probably over-exaggerating this, but when it's about over 20 minutes of deleted footage in a movie to where it starts to interfere with the plot, like if you make a full movie and you're going to put like chunks of deleted footage in there and still try to call this a feature film, I have a problem with that. It's kind of like Puppet Master, how when you got to part 6, it pretty much became stock footage of the movie, where at part 6 they started using stock footage from the first movie and the second movie, literally just taking scenes from those movies and just putting them in the movie. And Puppet Master had that happen, you know, ever since part 6. Part 6, I think, was the first one to do that. And you had part 7 do it. You had, well, I don't know if Retro Puppet Master did it, but I know that part 8 did it, and other sequels in the Puppet Master franchise have pretty much reused footage from the original movies. And granted, in this movie, it doesn't really take footage from like 2 and 3, but it uses a lot of deleted footage from the first movie, sometimes used effectively. Like, I like the scene where they hang the tall man, and Michael Baldwin ends up going back and cutting the tall man down, and he turns around, boy. I like that scene. I like the scene where the tall man's driving, and he hits a dog, and he kind of has no remorse for it. Pretty creepy scene, pretty eerie scene. But the rest stuff, like, the ending of the movie kind of ends on a cliffhanger, and this was meant to be the last one at the time. I think this was meant to be the last one. If I'm not mistaken, I believe this was meant to be the final movie. So I do think that they made this movie kind of at the time to be maybe the final one. But they end it on a cliffhanger. They have a deleted scene there, which I really didn't. It kind of added nothing to the movie. And there's a couple other deleted scenes that really doesn't add anything to the movie. It just feels like, okay, we have maybe, you know, an hour and something minute running time. How are you going to get it to like an hour and 20 minutes? I think is it even an hour and 20 minutes? It's an hour and 30 minutes. So it's like, it feels like they shot the movie and they pretty much was like, oh, that's a pretty low runtime, so let's throw in some deleted scenes. So I really didn't like that. I, you know, wasn't really a big fan of that. I'm not, once again, a really big fan of how the movie starts off, because you pretty much find out that maybe that little kid character, I believe his name was Tim, you think that maybe he died and you never see Rocky again, and pretty much the tall man lets Reggie go. For what reason? I have no clue. Reggie is literally being held up against the wall with a bunch of spheres, and the tall man could kill him right there. Now, granted, I didn't want to see the character Reggie die, but logically, it's like, why is the tall man just letting him live, you know? It's like if Jason caught up to somebody, grabbed him, and then just let him go. He didn't kill him, he just grabbed him up for a second, and then just kind of let him go. It just wouldn't make sense. Tall Man is after Reggie and Mike to kill them, so that they can get out of his way. And I guess that the explanation for that from, I guess, Angus Scrimm and the director and also the fans is that the tall man kind of plays games. You know, he wants to play around with his food and he wants to, you know, kind of play around with his victims. But the thing is, if Reggie and Mike are trying to stop the tall man over 2 sequels, no, really over 3, because not 3 sequels, but like 3 movies, first, second, and third. They're trying to stop the tall man, getting in his way. And the 5th movie, he's kind of irritated with Reggie getting in his way. So I'm like, in 4, you had him pinned against the wall with spheres, and you let him go. So in 5, the tall man's irritated because Reggie is still in his way. But I'm like, if he's irritated, then why didn't he just kill him in 4? At the beginning of this movie, Reggie is being held up by a bunch of spheres, and he doesn't get killed. So the beginning is a little rocky for me once again. I like how in this movie, though, this is also a really big positive. I like how A. Michael Baldwin was kind of run back into the lead scene again. And in Phantasm IV, he came back as Mike again, A. Michael Baldwin, but he didn't really get to do much in Phantasm III. So I like how in this movie it's more about the tall man and Mike's interaction, and Reggie trying to catch up to the tall man, and I like that storyline. And that's pretty much what it's about. I mean, Mike, from the end of Part 3, drives away in a hearse. The hearse is under the control of the tall man. I like how he tries to steer it and stop the car and break the windows, but nothing works. And I like that scene with the tall man sitting back of the hearse, and Mike kind of goes, "No." And the tall man's kind of like, "Yes, boy." It's a great scene. It's the way that's done. And I like how they're kind of just having a back and forth with dialogue and stuff like that, and the tall man kind of climbs to a casket, and you think that maybe it's a portal to the red kind of dimension that the tall man's from. Good scene. And pretty much from there on, Mike discovers that, you know, since he has this fear that was put in his head, he's able to kind of have, you know, closer contact with the tall man. The tall man basically is trying to get Mike to become the next tall man. I like that idea. Fresh idea. I commend the movie for that. Great idea. And Mike kind of goes to different portals and finds out that the tall man used to be Jedediah Morningside, who was this mortician way back in like 1800s. And he invented this portal that when he stepped through, when he came back, he was a tall man. So I like that. It's a pretty decent idea of having an origin story in there. I like the idea of Mike kind of exploring the different parts of the tall man lore, different parts of the origin story of the tall man. I like that. I love this scene, by the way, where, you know, basically he teleports to like kind of like a Los Angeles looking area, and it's right in the middle of like a downtown kind of maybe Los Angeles, and there's nobody around. It's kind of like 28 Days Later, where it's right smack dab in downtown London, and there's no cars, there's no people, there's no sounds. It's pretty much the guy walking by himself, and there's like trash and garbage everywhere. Here, it's like Tall Man is walking, and this big open area. I don't know how he did it, but it's like a big open area. Lots of wide shots, so you're really seeing a big chunk of the area, and there's no people. I have no clue how they did that. But yet again, I haven't seen the commentary on the movie, and maybe they would explain it in that, but that was a really impressive scene. That was really impressive. And I like what Reggie goes through. You know, he deals with this kind of zombie cop, you know, shoots him with the shotgun through the roof and blows the car up. Meets this really hot chick who, of course, it's Reggie's weakness. Meets this hot chick. She ends up being a servant of the tall man once again. And pretty much when he opens her shirt, you know, to kind of get a look at her boobs, she has like 2 spheres, and they fly out of her, and one of them flies into his hand, and you have a fun little scene right there. And pretty much Reggie is chasing after Mike and the tall man. The tall man is trying to get Mike to kind of follow him. Bill Thornberry comes back in this movie, does a really good job. They kind of do a weird thing with him where maybe he's a bad guy, maybe he's not. And then, once again, a confusing thing where you think that in part 3, Bill Thornberry comes back to help Mike. But really, it's not Bill Thornberry, according to this movie, because when Bill Thornberry is killed, he's like, I died in the car accident. So it's like, is he a good servant or a bad servant? There's parts where he's trying to kill Mike. There's parts where he's not. There's a really good scene where Mike is, talking to Jody, and he stabs him, and, he pretty much says, had to be sure, so I made sure I didn't kill my own brother. And when he's walking up this way, another Bill Thornberry comes out of nowhere. That was a pretty good scene. I like the scene where Mike discovers that he kind of has these, I know it sounds stupid, but it's a really good scene where he finds out that he has these powers to kind of control things and move things with his mind, which is funny, because I can buy that more than psychic connections from part 2 between Mike and the lead girl. I don't know. I had fun with the idea. I took it seriously, and I got behind it. Mike having these powers and his eyes going silver, and how he kind of makes his own sphere to battle the tall man with. I really like the ideas they brought in this movie. And pretty much Reggie is going after them, finally catches up to Mike. Mike is about to get his head cut open by the tall man to get the sphere out. Because Tallman, I guess, wants to take back what's his power. And Mike kind of uses, I guess, this tuning fork. Which I guess this tuning fork can kind of make the tall man not move. So when that happens, Mike kills Bill Thornberry. That's when Bill Thornberry's like, I died in the car crash. So I'm kind of thinking, so why were you helping them in part 3 if you're a bad guy now? Questions like that, I didn't really understand, but hey, it's Phantasm. I mean, that's kind of what the franchise does, But the ending, I just didn't really care for, where Mike comes out of the portal, and pretty much the tall man comes out as well. Mike uses his powers and takes the sphere and hits it in the back of the tall man's head. And I like how the tall man pulls out of his head, he's like, a toy. And then Mike uses, once again, his powers to, I guess, blow up the car, blow up the tall man. So I'm like, you better destroy that portal or something. Better get out of there, because they should know that the tall man does not die like that. Even in part 5, he says he has thousands of himself. So it's like they blow up the tall man, they think it's over. Tall man comes out, they're all surprised and like, he came back the same way in part 3. And really enough, I think he got killed in part 1, so maybe part 2. And then it's like, in part 3 you thought he got killed, and then at the beginning of this movie, the ending of part 3 as well, he's still alive. So it's like, you guys have already tried to kill him before, and he has not died, so why are you acting so surprised now? I didn't really understand that. Tall man goes over, grabs the sphere out of Mike's head, walks back to the portal, teleports off. Mike is laying there. Reggie goes after the tall man, and you get this flashback of Reggie and Mike driving off into the night, where it's a deleted scene from the first movie. The movie ends on a cliffhanger. I'm like, this is part 4, If it was part 2, it'd be one thing, and even part 3 can kind of be a stretch. So we get to part 4, and you get all these answers to questions, and then you end it on a cliffhanger, knowing that you're not sure if you're going to make another Phantasm movie. I guess once again, another problem. And I think that Don Coscarelli did say that he was making this movie as if maybe they could make another movie after this, but maybe they couldn't. So I'm like, if you're going to make a Phantasm 4, knowing that you don't know for sure if you can make another Phantasm movie, which they didn't make another Phantasm movie for a long, long time, like 20 years, but you end up on a cliffhanger. So I have a problem with that. I think the other problems as well is, like I said, the beginning of the movie is pretty rocky. The budget in this movie is a little bit lower than like 2 and 3. Well, 2 actually had a really high budget. But even Phantasm 3 had this great look to it. In this movie, and definitely in 5, You can tell they kind of had less money to work with in this movie. It just kind of looks a little bit more cheaper. Just something about the look of the movie. So it does look a bit cheaper. Not really in necessarily good camera angles or camera shots. Other than the one that's in the open kind of downtown area where there's no people at, which I still don't know how they did that. But that and the like I said, the cliffhanger ending and using deleted footage a lot. So really, you do have some problems with the sequel. That's why I can honestly say it's a decent sequel, but it's definitely not one of my favorite ones. I know it's a movie that is considered a favorite among fans. For me, it has good things, but also has bad things. Good things, practical effects, an excellent story, new direction with the story, creativity. Angus Graham and the rest of the cast is great. Direction is pretty good. But overall, Phantasm IV Oblivion, it's a decent sequel, but I do think it has problems. I do think that there's some things in this movie that could have changed around, or maybe done a little bit more differently. But overall, Phantasm IV is definitely a decent sequel, and for the longest time it was the final Phantasm movie, until Phantasm V Ravager, which I'll be getting to tomorrow. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching my review on Phantasm IV. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for Phantasm V Ravager. See you guys later. The Explorer of Horror, out.